Well, he is very talented. Anybody that takes over a situation like he did at 26 years of age and is able to run it and run it tough. I don't say he was nice.
Yeah, I'd say he wasn't. I've got a one-man audience that I poll for opinions on Donald Trump from Trump voters, my one Trumpist that I talk to. I got this text from my brother yesterday. Not sure I like my president acting chumming with a dictator that watches hungry German shepherds kill his own relatives. From one Trumpist.
Wow. This segment of the Armstrong and Getty Show brought to you by potcoin.com. We welcome the fabulous Ian Bremmer to the show, the president and founder of Eurasia Group. Mr. Bremmer, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Potcoin futures are soaring right now. There's no question.
That wouldn't take much. But so listen, as you may recall here on the Armstrong and Getty Show, we don't attack things from a partisan way. We just try to figure out what the hell is going on. As a gentleman who looks at the world in a similar way, your gut reaction, your initial reaction to the summit, please.
Very good for Kim Jung Un. Very good for Trump. Very good for China. Probably very good for North Korea, too. Not clear how good it is for the United States, right, if you really want to look at things, right, because Trump really wanted this meeting to happen. The G7 was a disaster. He really wanted to make history. He wanted to show a good relationship with North Korea. But the North Koreans haven't actually given the U.S. anything yet in the terms of the summit. The Americans have, and it's not clear why, aside from the fact that Trump wasn't very well prepped. So, I mean, I think that if you want to rate the summit, it's a big deal. I think you'd say that for Trump himself, probably going to help him in the midterms, help the Republicans in the midterms, makes him look a little stronger as a foreign policy actor. But you wouldn't give it an A. I mean, you'd give it like maybe a B- and an incomplete, and we'll see.
Right.
They can turn it into something really big if, Pompeo, the Secretary of State, and the North Koreans then actually get some commitments from the North Koreans to get some inspectors in and start moving towards taking down some of their capacity to strike the U.S. But we're not there yet.
Sure. Now, you had a recent tweet in which you were quite complimentary of Trump's accomplishments with North Korea thus far.
Absolutely. I think that the reason that the North Koreans, the big thing that's happened here is that we have a North Korean leader, Kim Jung Un, that had not met with a single foreign leader, unless you count Dennis Rodman, hadn't met with one, right? And then Trump does fire and fury. Then Trump pushes the Chinese to really strengthen sanctions. And Kim Jong Un is in a box. And as a consequence of that, Kim Jong Un starts reaching out. But the big news is not really the U.S. summit. The big news is that the Americans pushed hard, and then the North Koreans started reaching out to everyone on the Olympics, 2 summits with the South Korean president, 2 with the Chinese president. They just invited the Russian foreign minister. He was there last week. They showed up early, met with the Singaporean prime minister, did selfies with the foreign minister. Then they meet with Trump, and probably a Putin summit very soon. That's a big deal, but we can't pretend that the United States is the country that comes out of this the ultimate winner, even though we're the ones that brought all of it to pass.
Well, let me quote Ian Bremmer from CBS this morning. I think the biggest win is that 6 months ago we were talking about the possibility of military preemption against North Korea. It's almost inconceivable now that there's a short-term risk of military conflict. So that's a good thing for everybody, isn't it?
So in that regard, the biggest winner, humanity, the biggest winner, the South and North Korean people who were legitimately worried that they might face conflagration, and now they're not. I always thought it was a relatively low likelihood. We had some people, Richard Haas, a friend of mine, runs the Council on Foreign Relations. He said 50% a few months ago. It's now close to 0. That's a good thing, and Trump deserves some credit for that.
So if Kim Jong Un is anything like his papa and grandpapa, what he is doing is playing for time, loosening his sanctions, a little hard currency to the regime, et cetera, et cetera. That'll buy him 5-10 years more nuclear development.
He probably doesn't need that. He probably needs 9 months to get what he needs to really threaten us.
Sure, but he gets cash to pay off the critical supporters of the regime, et cetera, et cetera. How confident are we that little fathead is actually a new kind of Kim?
We're not. There's no reason for us to be confident. I do think that Trump saying, I trust the little guy, is going to go down as one of the more extraordinary statements, right? I mean, just like, when Bush looked Putin in the eyes and said, I saw his soul, that was a mistake. Bush feels bad about that now. Trump even said in 6 months, maybe I'll get this wrong, but I'll come up with an excuse. I won't admit it. I thought that was exactly right. Trump said the truth for once. There's no reason to trust the North Koreans, but it's also true that if the North Koreans don't let inspectors in, if they don't actually start dismantling at least some capability, then this isn't going to go very far. And by the way, the Chinese will be angry then too. So I do think that this opening by the North Koreans does have to lead to some substantive concessions, but they're going to, in my view, they'll be nowhere close to Pompeo and Bolton's complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization. Like, that's just not going to happen. Those words appeared nowhere in the joint statement. There was no complete and there was no verifiable. There was only denuclearization, and for the whole peninsula, which was very fuzzy and not very well defined. I got to say, if you're John Bolton right now, I know he's happy to be the national security advisor. This is not a deal that he would find acceptable.
Well, it's a deal to make a deal, isn't it?
Well, I mean, so here's the thing that I didn't like about this. If I wanted to be critical, and my intention is not to be critical for Trump on this one, because I do think on balance Trump's done a better job than other presidents so far. But if I wanted to be critical, I would say, damn it, Trump, because you didn't bother to prepare, because you refused to read and listen to some pretty good advisors, and you refused to let them carry the detail for you at the meeting, you ended up giving away the store and saying, we're not going to do any military activities, no exercises with the South Koreans. And by the way, he further said that they are expensive. Why are we spending all this money? And he further said that they're provocative. The North Koreans see them as provocative. They are provocative. He should have said none of those things. That severely undermines our relationship with the South Koreans and Japan, who count on the American umbrella. It does it in the absence of anything concrete that's a giveaway from the North Koreans in the summit. No one would have suggested that Trump do that, and Trump did it because he doesn't know diplomacy. He doesn't care. And I think that's a mistake. So the problem is that even when he gets it right, he shoots himself in the foot. He can't help it.
Well, he ran on being less involved in the world, and that's what he won on. And he said that's what he's going to do, and that's what he seems to be. Here's what I'm hoping. This is my biggest hope: is the little fat guy from North Korea actually has had some sort of, as a young man, just change of heart, change of mind, where he thinks, I don't want to live like my dad and my granddad. I don't want the country to continue to be that way. I want to be completely different. Any chance that happens?
Yeah. Absolutely, there is. The fact that I'm not enormously happy with the way this initial summit went for the United States does not mean we can't get it to a really good place when the United States and the North Koreans start engaging in serious diplomacy. That could really happen. There is an opportunity for Kim Jung Un here. But I suspect the more likely outcome is that the lack of coordination between Trump and advisors means that the North Koreans see opportunities to obfuscate, to delay, to steal. They work more closely with the Chinese, that ultimately the Chinese become the most powerful actor in the region on this issue. So in other words, the same way that Obama kind of failed on Syria, and now the Syrians are completely in the hands of the Russians and the Iranians, ultimately, I suspect, for all of his reasonably good intentions, Trump is going to end up ceding the Korean Peninsula to the Chinese.
Oof. Oh, boy. Ian Bremmer, president and founder of Eurasia Group, on the line. It is my opinion that future historians, should peace and prosperity come to the Korean Peninsula, historians will hail Dennis Rodman as a great hero of humanity. I'm not asking you if I'm right. I'm telling you I'm right.
You are right. And nobody hustles the boards like Rodman.
Absolutely.
I feel bad when he was crying last night. He's like, everyone gave me such a hard time for, sort of meeting with Kim Jung Un, and look what's happening now. I mean, he came a little too early.
Dennis Rodman and Draymond Green need to operate some sort of basketball camp that teaches kids to become really effective a-holes on the court.
This is all
I
so.
think that Rodman is going to make some serious coin, and I mean actual coin.
Not pot coin.
If it